Hello everyone and welcome to my F2 calendar, the 2025 F2 World Championship. Now I know it's already come out and you can see it beside me. We're starting in Melbourne, then heading to Sakir, Jeddah, then Imola. Then we go to Monte Carlo, Barcelona, Spielberg, and then Silverstone. Then we have a bit of a mid-season break before we head to Spa-Francorchamps, Budapest, then Monza, finishing off with Baku, Lusail in Qatar, and Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. Now, I've made a lot of changes to this layout because personally, some of these tracks I don't like F2 racing at, and I prefer they go somewhere else, somewhere new maybe. So today in this video, we're looking at what I think they should do for the 2025 F2 season. For me, my biggest issue with the current F2 grid is that sometimes it's not pushing the drivers hard enough. I know the car's a bit limiting, but so are the tracks. We've seen drivers like Liam Lawson, Felipe Drugovich, Theo Pourchaire, Oscar Piastri. These guys haven't gone straight in to F1 even though they're after the F2 champion. I mean, we haven't seen an F1 driver go into F1 straight away apart from Zoe, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago. So we need these tracks to really push these drivers, which is what you'll see coming up. Starting off with Australia, and personally I love this track and I can't wait to see it reinstated as its first weekend on the grid. I think this makes a lot more sense starting here rather than going back to Bahrain and then Australia and then all the way back to Saudi Arabia. I like this. So this track I think has changed a lot positively in the last few years with the changes that they've made, opening out some of those corners and also putting in more DRS zones, and this has proved wonders. There's been way more overtaking as a result of this race this year, so hopefully they keep it on the calendar for many years to come, because it's great going down under. Now we're going to Japan, and F2 hasn't raced here before since its rebranding at least, so I think it's really positive. I mean, they're heading that way anyway, going over to the Middle East after this, as is typically what happens in the season and in the F1 season as well. So putting in Japan isn't adding a lot of mileage to the transport, and also it's a great track and the Japanese fans deserve it. A lot more racing going on, but I know there's also a lot of other series that can happen alongside it, so maybe there's room for F2, but personally I would love to see the F2 drivers racing around this difficult, compelling circuit. I mean, you have those S's at the start leading onto that bridge segment, then you have that high speed section at turn 14 heading to turn 15, 130R, where the drivers have to keep their foot on the pedal, going through full throttle. It's a real challenge for the drivers, so I'd love to see the F2 drivers challenge this way also. Get it on the calendar. Although I don't think it's the most overtaking friendly of tracks with only one DRS zone, I definitely think it shows the driver's ability and a lot of drivers love it. So let's get them on there early so that when they do reach F1 it's not a big of a step. And then the old usual, we have Bahrain. Now this track always delivers. I think it's a really solid track, although there's not much changeable conditions. It always delivers. I like how it's very open and very overtaking friendly, especially with that first corner, how there's a lot of options for overtaking maneuvers heading into that second DRS zone as well, into turn 4. So keep on the track for me, it's fine where it is. And then, as always, where this is on the calendar, we head to Jeddah. Now this track in Saudi Arabia is decent, it's high speed, big walls, it's difficult, and a mistake costs you. And I think having to lay all that on the line is good for these drivers. I mean, we've seen some good races so far here, and I think as long as it still is competitive and the track's solid, keep it here. I know they're thinking about changing track to a new one being built with that wacky massive hairpin in the air, so maybe they can change over to that in a few years, but for now, keep it at Jeddah because I like this high-speed street circuit. It's usually good quality for overtaking with those 3 DRS zones as well through some quite windy sections, as well as some interesting maneuvers happening in the last corner, turn 27. And now we head to Monaco. And you might be thinking, where's Imola? Because it was scheduled to be in the next race after Jeddah. I've removed it. Personally, I don't like having 2 races in the same country. I mean, I understand USA having 3 races because they have such a big population with around 300 million people there, but Italy, they don't. And also, Imola is okay when it is a bit wet and there's changeable conditions, but when it's dry, as we saw this season, not much overtaking due to the limited amount of DRS zones and sharp corners. But Monaco, I know it's also very similar with a lot of overtaking, and the onus is on qualifying, but I think it's okay, especially when there's pit stops being a big part of it, strategy playing a massive part. I think this kind of is enough for a season, going to a place where it's difficult to overtake. Monaco is fine, it's a bit boring during the race, but there's always something going on in F2, be that a crash like we saw this year, meaning Dirksen went out, he was in yellow flag in the last lap, and then O'Sullivan came in to pit lane to win the race after going long. So I think it's just it's a staple, an icon of motorsport, and it should be kept on the calendar. And after that, we're going to Austria, and again we're skipping a race. This time Barcelona is out. I don't really mind Barcelona as a circuit. I think there's a lot of overtaking there. I know it's a staple of F2 that's been there for years and years and years, but they test there, and I want to see some other circuits, so I've removed that one, keeping a lot of these other European races that I think are just better value, like Austria, where there's 3 overtaking opportunities heading into turn 1, turn 3 and turn 4 after the DRS zones. I mean, this track feels like a go-karting track. I mean, it's got a short lap time, there's a lot of potential for different strategy options with such a nice layout. There's lots of overtaking opportunities, and I think the drivers love it as well. It's one of my favourite tracks, especially to race in any of the games, so we're keeping it on there. Now we head to Silverstone, and personally I think Silverstone needs to stay because it is a great circuit. We have Megs and Beckett, so there's winding sections, and also there's some long curving kind of medium speed corners which I think really test the drivers. And that's the 7th and last race of the first half of the season, and then we can see what that kind of journey looks like as we fly from each country to country. So we head on from Australia to Japan, then to the Middle East, and then to Europe for a few rounds. Now I think this journey is, if anything, a little bit longer than the first half of the season for F2, but that's because we head to Japan. And now, in the second half of the season, we're starting with Spa. This is, I think, typical. Everyone knows Spa is a great track. It's a little bit long, but I think that challenge adds something to the driver, especially in qualifying, where any mistakes is costly. So keeping it together for the whole lap, which is usually around just under 2 minutes, is impressive. So keep it in for me. I love the first corner, Eau Rouge. I have it painted on my wall. It is an amazing corner with a lot of action going on. It's just a nice track. And also the amount of conditions, weather variables. It's a great track. Keep it in the calendar. It's something different. Let's go. Then after Belgium, we head to Zandvoort, skipping Hungary, which is on the F2 calendar, the actual F2 calendar for the next year, 2025. So I've skipped Hungary and we're heading instead to Zandvoort. And I like this, I think. I think heading to Hungary is a bit limiting. I think it's also another track which is difficult to overtake on, apart from the first and second corners, when you're kind of having the first hairpin and then getting another little dose of DRS before the second hairpin. But in Zandvoort, there's a lot more opportunities. I think that second DRS zone, when you come off that banked curve, is really nice overtaking zone into that hairpin on turn 1. So I like that. I also like the tricky section in the middle where it's a bit more slow, windy. You've got that banked corner, which I think is getting more and more popular. Throwback to the old Monza layout. So let's go there for an F2 race. I think this is part of the season where it's a lot more condensed than the typical F2 calendar, and this kind of tests the F2 drivers to see if they have what it takes to kind of live week by week as an actual professional racing driver. And next we head to Monza. As always, it's a high-speed circuit, the fastest one on the track apart from Jeddah. It's great. I think it tests a lot of those high-speed cornering abilities, especially around the Parabolica. It's a great track, everyone loves it. You need to have an Italian track on the grid because the Italian fans are wonderful, so they keep Monza, but they leave Imola. So at least they have one. Then after that is Baku, and this is not a change from the actual F2 calendar. It's the same, and I think it deserves to be there. I mean, we had some great races around there with Ollie Behrman winning last season. There's got some cool sections like the castle section around turn 10, 11, 12. It's a nice track. It's got those high speed turns, those 90-degree turns as well, which I think are quite difficult and different to what a lot of these drivers have seen in the past, because they usually go to a lot of those open, proper racetracks, whereas these street circuits, even like Jeddah, are a bit windy. This one is proper street circuit, 90-degree turns, and really testing their ability to brake on time. And then, another new one. They go to Qatar. I don't like that. Why would you go to Qatar? I think the F1 races there haven't been great, and I think the F2 races, they probably will be better than F1 races because there's more action going on with more drivers and kind of more variabilities. But I prefer to go somewhere like Singapore, where it's similar to Baku. It's 2 weeks in a row of testing their ability on a street circuit, a proper street circuit, with those tight walls, 90-degree turns, and those kind of leave it all on the line or get wiped out. It's gonna be a great time, especially with those kind of difficult conditions that we've seen, especially last year. I know Liam Wilson struggled. I think this kind of could help bring the fitness up, kind of the expectation of these F2 drivers up to an almost F1 standard. So I think having the Singapore circuit, the street circuit, at night in a very, very humid and high temperature environment can only do good things for the whole pack. There might be a few medical concerns, but if they're concerned, they shouldn't be an F1 driver, so they shouldn't be an F2 driver either. Bring them to Singapore. And after that, I think they should head to the USA. I mean, the USA need an F2 race. I think it's a really good opportunity for F2 to kind of promote their own brand at Austin, at Dakota. So I think they should go there. It's a nice track. It's kind of well surfaced, really, really open. So it kind of lets the drivers breathe after the last 2 races at street circuits in Baku and Singapore. So we should go to Austin and let these drivers have a bit more fun on those long straights with really wide corners, and they can kind of take a bit different more moves, especially going up to the first corner up that big hill to the flagpole. They can spend some sense of moves up there and make it happen. I personally really like Austin. I think it's grown a lot in the past couple of seasons, so put it on the calendar for 2025. And then my last race, we're not going to Abu Dhabi. I mean, yes, Ireland is okay. It's just okay for me. I don't think it's very interesting. And I think season finale should be kind of spread out over the country. So I think every year you should end at a different one. This year, I'm ending it at Brazil. I love this track. I think it throws back to what I was saying about Austria being more like a karting track with this kind of twisty, windy turns leading out to those high-speed sections with the DRS open, like around turn 14 and around turn 5. You can really get the car going and then catch up in those windy sections and then go again. We've seen amazing F1 races here, so I think if you bring F2 here, it would kind of embolden the spectacle of the race weekend, especially as I'm not really sure what other supporting series happen there. So it'd be good to have either F2 or F3 there, probably F2 because it's probably a bit more difficult and a bit more costly getting out all the way over there. And I want it to be the season finale, ending at Brazil. And we can see the last 7 tracks, kind of the route that they're going to take, starting in Europe, heading over to Baku, and then heading all the way out to Singapore, and then out to the USA and Brazil, ending in Brazil. I think with Dragovic and Bortoleto and Enzo Fittipaldi, they have a lot of F2 talent in Brazil, so I'd love to see them support their home drivers in their home country, get on the grid. You can see here my full 14 race long grid. Let me know what you think, what kind of countries should and shouldn't be on the grid. Personally, I'm really, really happy with this. I know it's a little bit more travelling, a little bit more air mileage, but I think it's worth it for the experience that these drivers will gain heading out to all these different circuits around the different countries. Thank you for watching. Peace.